Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. Paula Vail here, and today's show is going to be so elevating. I am just thrilled and excited to share with everyone our amazing guest. We have with us today Steve Gooch, author of Mindfulness Meditation and the Art of Reiki, and Reiki Jin Kei Do, the Way of Compassion and Wisdom. Being a long-time meditator, he has been involved in the field of personal development training since the mid-1990s and founded both Reiki Jin Keido International and Reiki Jin Keido UK. He has an amazing background. He is known everywhere, and we are going to be talking today about his latest book, The Mindfulness Meditation and the Art of Reiki. It is absolutely fantastic. Being a Reiki lover of Reiki myself, I just loved it. So first off, welcome, Steve. Welcome.
Thank you, Paula. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, I would love for you to share, if you'd like, a little more of your background and kind of what brought you to, deciding to write these books and doing the creating and help that you give to others.
Yes, well, it's been a really interesting journey for me, I guess, and I guess it started when I was a kid. I was, I guess, 10, 11, 12 years old, something like that, and my father had on his bookshelf, just had this small bookshelf, and it was filled with books about hypnotherapy, pyramid energy, Buddhist monks, positive thinking, law of attraction. And of course, I love reading, even as a kid, I love reading. So I would just plow through all of my father's books. And I started learning all of this stuff, when I was 10, 12, 13 years old. By the time I was 16, I taught myself how to hypnotize people from my father's books on self-hypnosis. And I used to hypnotize my friends at parties. That's where I got started. It was crazy. And then I guess and then I went to art college. I studied art, got a degree in fine art, and while that was going on, and through my 20s, I was really starting to explore things like meditation, looking at different spiritual traditions around the world, and things like the Kabbalah and Native American spirituality, and looking into Christianity and other aspects of Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism. It was just a long, lifelong process of interest and learning, really. And I ended up at the gates of Reiki back in the mid-90s. I guess that was part of that ongoing journey. But that was a pivotal moment when I came across Reiki, for sure.
Oh, wow. Were you familiar with it when you first came across it, or was it like, wow, this is something new, I want to learn it? And did you learn it in Egypt, or where
No,
did it?
I learnt it here in the UK. And at the time I learnt it, I was at a point in my life where everything was a wreck. I mean, my whole life was just leveled to the ground. And I was just looking for anything to pull me out of this dark space that I felt that I was in at that time. And I'd sort of always had an interest in alternative therapies. I didn't really know much about any particular therapy, but I had an interest. And I thought, well, maybe, a new career direction, a new start for me would be to train in some sort of alternative therapy. Well, which therapy? I didn't really know where to start. And I was out of work at the time. I couldn't afford to, pay a lot of money for some training. And then I came across this one-page article in a magazine about this thing called Reiki, which I'd never heard of. And I thought, this sounds interesting. This sort of, I like this. And it's not, the first level class, it's only a couple of days and it's not that expensive. So maybe this is a good place to start. And if it's no good, I haven't really lost very much. So I signed up for that first level Reiki class. This was 3 months ahead of the class. It took me 3 months to save the money to pay that class fee. And I remember so clearly the day before I attended that first degree Reiki class, I was walking around my hometown here in the UK, basically talking myself out of going to this class. I was like, I need this money for these bills and I need it for this. And, this is crazy. What am I doing? I shouldn't be wasting my time, my money. And I just got to the point where I was going to make a decision not to go. And I looked up, and in front of me across this the wall of this huge building was a billboard. And it just said, "The magic is closer than you think." And I thought, I've got to go. That's it. So decision made. I didn't back out. I went to the class, and it just turned my life around at that point.
It is, isn't it? I mean, I really, for years, have described Reiki as it's life-changing. It really, really is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is.
And
Yes. Mm.
you and with your book, you connect, so much mindfulness information, and how when we bring in mindfulness and mindfulness meditation with our Reiki, what that does to open that up even more. I loved it.
I think for me, my journey through Reiki, I started out back in the mid-90s learning, Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki level 3. And initially, after Reiki level 2, I was working as a full-time Reiki practitioner, just doing lots of Reiki treatments. Back then, there weren't that many Reiki people around, so I'd sort of cornered the market. I had no competition. I was the only Reiki practitioner for hundreds of miles in any direction, which was great. So that's where I started. But as time went by and I practiced more and more with the system, I started to realize that actually, first of all, I wasn't that interested in doing the energy healing anymore. And actually, that really wasn't what the system was about anyway. It's the simplest expression of what Reiki is and could potentially be. And I started to discover more and more as that training process went on, as my experience gathered over the years. And I do think that meditation, and I don't mean Western New Age meditations of any kind, I mean mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness underpins the whole practice of Reiki. And without it, I don't really think that you can engage in that practice to its full potential unless you're working with a deep mindfulness practice at the same time.
Yeah, because that, would you say, just opens up that connection, and that, what you receive or what you have go through you with Reiki.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference, doesn't it? And something you said in the book that I love, mindfulness is the release valve into awareness. That
Yeah,
is a powerful statement, Steve.
it is. I know. And, for me, the whole function of the system of Reiki is to be still. It has no other purpose. It is about learning to be utterly still. It's like being the eye at the center of the hurricane. That's what you need to become. Completely still, completely empty. That's what Reiki is for. And when I'll tell you what the consequences of that are. And this is something I tell my students. And this is such a powerful way of viewing the whole concept of healing within Reiki. Now, we can take the perspective of using Reiki as a tool to just go out and, give healing sessions to other people. We work on one client and then another and another. We're having a small impact in the world. There's nothing special about this. It's not very impressive. Anybody can do it. But when you work on yourself deeply and you become that set still point, at the center of life's hurricane. Healing happens because you exist in the world. Your presence becomes a healing mechanism. That is profound. That is impressive.
Oh,
That's what Reiki is about.
yes. Yes, it is. Oh, I love that. And would you say a big part of that is that just calmness of mind and just trust? And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's more than that. It's about transcending the concept of mind altogether. Um, Going beyond that, losing that sense of identity. I had an experience, a very profound experience of this a few years ago with one of my students who came to me for a Reiki treatment, a Reiki healing session. She worked for she worked in a very high-powered corporate environment, and she had to fly from Egypt to New York for some big meeting, and she was leaving behind a whole bunch of deadlines and other meetings. And she was like so stressed. And she came to me and she said, "Steve, I need a Reiki treatment. Help me." She said, "I'm so stressed." So she lay on my treatment bed, and literally this was in the first 5 minutes of this treatment session. I've got my hand somewhere on her head and I drop into a meditation. And literally, I felt, this is about 2 minutes into the treatment, I felt my mind and her mind merge into one. There was one mind. And then the concept of mind just vanished. And there was just awareness. And there was awareness of energy. And then that experience ended. I mean, it was a split second, but it felt like infinity. And as soon as that experience ended, I mean, I'm 2-3 minutes into the treatment now. I'm done. Treatment's finished. She gets off the treatment bed, and I'm about to say to her, "How do you feel?" And she said, "Shh." She said, "My mind is like a sheet of glass. There's not a single thought on it." And she just sat there in complete silence.
oh,
The two of us used the practice of Reiki, this whole healing approach to Reiki. We used it to reconnect and merge back into the absolute. That's what Reiki is for. That's why it is such a powerful system. It's not about energy healing. There's lots of systems that do this just as well as Reiki. There's nothing special about this. But Reiki is such a powerful practice for reconnecting to the absolute.
yeah. And would you say that that's a way that we can just get away from the clutter that's in our brain, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we need to do this. Yeah. We start to rediscover our true nature through that practice of mindfulness.
Yes. And then is it possible to bring this awareness to our breath? Let's
Mm,
talk about breath for a moment, how powerful that is.
yeah. Yeah. The breath. I mean, it's everything. We are the breath. I mean, we tend to think, um, of the breath as being something that the body just does. It just gets on with it, and we ignore it. Most of the time, it's just happening for us. Fortunately, we don't need to be conscious of this. It's on automatic pilot. It just happens for us, and we ignore it. Um, but it's not. It's not so much that the body is taking a breath. Oh, sorry, the lungs are taking a breath. It's the whole body that's breathing. We are the breath. What I remember, there was the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who died not long ago, a year or so ago. I remember, I can't quote him exactly, but he said something like, before he died, he said, "When I die," he said, "don't go looking for me in my tomb." He said, "You'll find me in the clouds. You'll experience me on your breath." You know, and it was such a profound statement that he made. You know, the breath is everything. One of the things that as you know, I teach in Egypt a lot. Yeah, so the majority of my students are Muslims. Some of them are Christians. Some of them don't have any particular religious affiliation. Most of them are Muslims. Um, And I wasn't particularly familiar with Islam before I went to Egypt. But since I've spent so many years, I've learned quite a lot about it. And I was really interested to discover that in Islam, uh, the teaching in Islam about the creation of the universe is that God um, took a breath and the universe manifested. So God created the universe from his breath. Okay. Now that's powerful. And that sort of, I reflected on that in terms of the practice that we have in Reiki, where, like, for instance, the attunements or the empowerments that I do, I use the breath to transmit the energy. And I'm thinking that's really interesting that Islam is teaching that God created the universe from his breath, therefore implying that the perfect vehicle for the transmission of creative energy is the breath. And here we are as human beings mimicking that in our Reiki attunement process to bring about this powerful energetic transformation in other people. So I find the breath is fascinating. I did. I mean, I use it. I use it in my Reiki treatments a lot. Obviously, I use it in the empowerments all of the time. But you know, I'll often give an interview where somebody will be questioning me about Reiki, and immediately, because if I sense they're skeptical and they're going to start trying to take apart everything that I'm saying, I'll immediately load my breath with Reiki energy, and I know that I'm transmitting it with every single word that I'm speaking.
I love it.
It changes the whole nature of that interview. They never get a chance to attack
I
the breath.
love it. When I do Reiki treatments for clients, I literally use my breath, and I just envision that Reiki just flowing through. It is just such a beautiful gift, the Reiki. And you talk about so many, I mean, we could go on for 2 hours, all the different amazing things you talk about in your book. Something I really enjoyed was you talking about the 3 treasures: essence, energy, and spirit. And they're subtle expressions of body, breath, and mind. And that these are our most precious assets, and they should be looked after, respected, and developed. I just thought that was beautiful, Steve.
Mm. I'll have to read my own book.
I know we tend to kind of forget what we had in there. Yeah,
Absolutely.
because it is, that's everything. And get into that awareness, and and you shared how important that awareness is.
Yeah.
And it is that is, it's just everything. And being in the moment, wouldn't you say, how important that is, and what that can do for us to just take time to be in the moment that we're in.
It is. And it's not just about being in the moment. It's about being in the moment and being in flow as well.
Beautiful.
Just allowing yourself to flow with the energy of the universe. And if you can do that, there's really not much else to do. I have to tell you this story about this one of my students. I love this guy. He's amazing. He's an Egyptian vet. Okay, so he's got a medical background, and so for him, he wants to have a rational scientific explanation backed up by medical evidence for everything. But despite that, he'd got an interest in learning Reiki. So he came with a level of skepticism and wanting to ask all the tough questions. And I said, that's good. I said, I love the tough questions. In fact, I want you to ask those. This is the place you should start from. So he was happy with this. So we went through the class, and then he's doing a Reiki treatment on another participant in the class. They're having a Reiki treatment practice. I watched it, and it was like, oh my God, it was the worst Reiki treatment I've ever seen. It was like watching a robot give Reiki. It was like just very rigid hand positions. And I said, no, stop. So I stopped, and I said, you just got to get into the flow of this. Like, it's energy, try to flow with the energy. And he couldn't get it. And so I said, right, come with me. And we went up to the window of the center that we were working in. Outside, there was a tree, and it was just blowing in the breeze. And I said to him, look, just pick a leaf. Pick one leaf. Now study that leaf. Watch it flow. So this is Tai Chi. It's just flowing. Now, all I want you to do is appreciate the entirety of God's creation in that one leaf. If you can flow with creation, there is nothing else for you to do. And he stood there for 10 minutes and just watched this leaf. And he came back and he's, oh my God, you couldn't believe the quality of his Reiki treatment. It was unbelievable. And now a year later, he's now doing his master's training with me. But he is such a good practitioner. And you watch this guy just flowing with this energy. It's amazing now, you know.
Isn't that beautiful? Just get in the flow. And, it's such a simple, but such a powerful thing. That just changed everything for him with it, didn't it?
Absolutely. And yet it is so hard for us to do that, We have so many blocks that we put on ourselves that it's sometimes really hard to stay in the flow,
Yeah. And that's true. That's true. We can have blocks. We can have, put up a fence. But, get in that flow and get in that mindfulness and awareness. And oh my gosh, our world changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It does.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And, I love that in your book, you talked about what you called habit releasers. And one was random acts of kindness. And that's a biggie for me. To me, it just accelerates you when you can do a kind act or give someone a compliment. And you say the benefit is in the giving, not in what you might receive back. And that is just so true. I mean, that's a gift for us when we do an act of kindness.
I think for me, that's all of those habit releases. I think the value and the importance in those is that as human beings, our mind tends to automate as much as it possibly can. So everything that can go on autopilot does go on autopilot. And so we end up being really quite unconscious of very large parts of our lives. And any of us that have ever learnt to drive a car, for instance, will have countless memories of driving somewhere and having not noticed at all almost that entire journey, because in our minds we're busy thinking about something else, and yet our body drove the car perfectly safely because the mind has automated that whole process, and it automates as much as it possibly can. It's part of our survival mechanism. It's a very good thing to have, but it does mean that we do miss huge chunks of our lives we're not conscious of in the moment. Those habit releases give us an opportunity to seize control back from the autopilot occasionally, So instead of us doing things on autopilot, we pull it back and say, okay, I'm going to be actually really quite conscious and aware of this process. I'll tell you my experience of doing that when I first did this with driving. I was on autopilot, just driving down the road, and I thought, I'm going to take this back. I'm just going to be very conscious about driving. And then I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And it's like, for a minute, I just couldn't remember how to drive the car. I thought, I'd forget this, put it back on autopilot, let the mind take over. So that wasn't a good experience for me. But yeah, it is, generally speaking, it's a very powerful thing to do. We should try and seize control back from the autopilot from time to time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes. Yes. Get our control back from that autopilot it's just there and it wants to be there. Well, Steve, with a few minutes left in the show, what last message do you want to share with everyone? What would you like them to think about today and really, really think about?
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to encourage, well, first of all, anybody that hasn't learnt Reiki, go and find yourself a good Reiki teacher and learn it, because it's such a powerful practice. And if you're already involved in Reiki, make sure that you're doing some good, solid mindfulness practice as well, and really explore the true depths of this system beyond energy healing, because that is the least it has to offer.
Yes, I love that. And, you know, teaching Reiki is such an honor. I've always felt it's an honor and a responsibility.
Mm.
And, and the more Reiki in the world, the better, I believe.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
life changing. And I actually learned Reiki to help my dog 15 years ago, and it helped her so much. Animals love Reiki.
They
Uh,
do.
yeah.
It's so transformative. I mean, I've seen it change so many people's lives. If there's time, I'll tell you one little story of one of my clients. This was a woman in Cairo, and her daughter, one of my students phoned me up and said, "My mother-in-law is dying of cancer. Is there anything you can do to help her?" Now, this woman, not only is she dying of cancer, but she's been told by the doctors that when she dies, it's going to be painful. So this poor woman, not only is she terrified because she's dying, she's now doubly terrified because it's going to be painful when it happens.
Mm.
So I went to see her and I said to my student, I said, look, it's just her time. Reiki is not going to change that. And I said, it's actually pointless me giving her a Reiki treatment. There's no benefit from this at all. It's a waste of time. I said, but what I will do is I will empower her to first degree Reiki. I'll give her the Reiki attunements and I'll show her how to do a Reiki self-treatment. So the woman agreed to have this done. So I attuned her to Reiki, showed her some hand positions she could use to give herself some treatments. 2 or 3 weeks later, my student phoned me up and she said, "You're never going to believe it." She said, "This woman, my mother-in-law," she said, "she sat there with her hands on her heart, a big smile on her face, and she just drifted off in complete peace.
Ah.
No pain,
Mhm.
just perfect happiness, peace, calmness, transition, just like that." And it was amazing. Now, the client died. There is an absolutely incredible example of healing at its highest level.
Mhm.
You know?
Yes. Yes. Because that's a beautiful story. And yeah, that is a great example of Reiki and what
Yeah,
you can
it
do.
is. Yeah.
Oh, Steve, this is so fantastic. Well, share with anyone any information you'd like, website, where they can get a copy of your book, any of that before we say goodbye.
Oh, yeah, you can get a copy of my book from any bookshop or online, Amazon, bookshop.org, any of the, any online bookshop or high street retailer will have it, or you can order it. It's available as a digital edition as well if you want that copy. You can contact me through my website, which is stevegooch.co. Um, and you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can message me there as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do want to share with everyone there's some fantastic meditations that Steve has for us, and his website's fantastic. So I really enjoyed it. And Steve, I so enjoyed you and just made my day to connect with you
Thank
on
you.
the other side of the world.
Thank you, Paula.
Oh, have a beautiful day. Love, hugs, and blessings. Everybody out there, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you for joining us today.